First, let me step back a little bit and explain how I got to where I was on October 2nd. I had planted brassicas the year before and overseeded them with rye. So here you see me spraying and killing the rye in preparation of replanting with ag soybeans. I was blessed with rain from the day I planted them through the summer. The ag Liberty Link soybeans germinated and grew really well. By late summer, they were 40 to 50 inches tall and full of luscious soybean pods. In late August, I mowed deer movement paths with my walk-behind brush hog through the lush, tall soybeans. I paid particular attention around the cedar scrape tree, making sure there was lots of room for scraping, rubbing, and feeding activity. This was my third year mowing paths in that field, and it's worked flawlessly. So the stage had been set. I'd been getting pictures of good bucks on that food source all summer through August until I'd pulled my game camera. I assumed the bucks were using a bedding area just northeast of the plot, about 100 to 150 yards away. I'd been keeping a close eye on the Weather Underground 10-day forecast. The afternoon of October 2nd was shaping up to be everything I hoped for. Post-cold front, high barometric pressure, northwest wind, and a rising moon just at dark. After my shower and scent control regimen, I headed to my blind. My entry was good, the wind was in my face, ensuring nothing in the bedding areas will smell me as I go in. Once I was settled in, I just had that feeling. I've felt this before. My spirit was guiding me. The first deer to show up was a basket-racked year-and-a-half-old 8-point that I'd recognized from trail cam pics. Another year-and-a-half-old 4 or 6-point shows up and starts feeding in the field. A couple of does showed up after the first 2 bucks fed into the northwest corner of the plot. Shortly after that, 2 more does came in on the west side as well. And wouldn't you know it, I see antlers off to the northeast, and the wide-10 enters the field. This is my first encounter with him in hard antler. He kept looking back from where he came, and another nice 3.5 or 4.5-year-old 10-point enters the field. The wide-10 had moved north of the cedar tree, out of range, as the narrow 10 feeds towards him. What a view I was being honored to have a ringside seat at. 2 shooters in the habitat that I'd worked so hard at all summer long. To watch these 2 nice bucks right out in front of me, about 50 yards away, sparring, pushing and shoving and feeding, I was just soaking it all in. and they both were standing in my mowed, overseeded trail while sparring and pushing and shoving. What a show of buck behavior I was witness to. He was working the licking branch and rub urinating. The narrow 10 follows right behind the wide 10 and has to leave his scent too. And before the narrow 10 leaves the field, he has to have another sparring match with the wide 10. Just so awesome. Watching the wide 10 making a scrape on limbs that I had cut so I could get through there with my tractor this year was a real treat. Watching the behaviors of the wide 10 and the narrow 10 for literally an hour or more was just the most enjoyable experience I'd had in quite some time, and there was a part of me that had to pinch myself to wake me up to keep me from being in a trance and focus on looking for a shot opportunity. After he got done making the scrape on the spruce tree limbs, two other bucks walked into the field. A odd-looking 2.5-year-old with kind of a spike on his right side, and then a really good-looking 2.5-year-old 8-point with a bit of a twist on his left main beam. Both were really good-looking deer. The bucks started heading northeast, working their way towards the cedar tree scrape. I was hopeful that possibly before I lose daylight, the wide 10 would get back in range. There was a lot of activity, from scraping, sniffing the base of the tree that had been recently rubbed, to feeding on that rootstock rye. It was an absolute blast to watch, I have to tell you. And at 18 yards away, it was up close and personal. Finally, the wide 10 has moved up within range. I'm trying to get some video of him, but it's too dark, so I just turned my video camera off, moved the tripod out of the way so I can take the shot. It happened pretty quick. After the shot, I lost track of him as he ran north of the cedar scrape tree, which blocked my view to see if he'd fallen or not. I stayed on stand till around 8:20 p.m., waiting until all the other deer left the field. I walked back to the house, cleaned up, changed my clothes, ate some dinner, and told Anea about the events. I put on my boots and outerwear clothing, and then took my lab Pepper with me so we could check out the hit area to see what we could find. Once Pepper's nose got on the trail, she literally pulled me right to him, and he never left the field. I returned to the house, picked up Anea. We came back, tagged him, took some photos, loaded him in the sled, then took him back to the garage, hung him up so we could get his live and his dressed weight. The following morning, we took some better daylight photos so we could just get a good shot of how large his body truly was. It turns out I have a couple of years of history with this buck, having lots of trail camera photos of him and a few encounters with him last fall. He has had his trademark sticker at the base of his right antler for the last 2 seasons. And this year, he's grown 2 stickers at the base of his right antler. This spring and summer, he seemed to make the Illinger property his home. I had countless photos and videos of him in all of my food plots and my transition zones and bedding areas. It was great to watch him grow and turn into the majestic buck that he is today. In this location, he sure spent a lot of time hugging the edges of that miscanthus grass, just like a big northern pike working the edges of a weed bed. He was always in that bean field where I killed him as well. Late in the summer, his velvet photos proved that he was truly a giant in my book. Thanks for watching my story about how I was able to harvest the wide-10 here on my small managed Michigan farm on my very first hunt of the season. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button and make comments below. Remember, consistency starts with attitude and finishes with hard work and discipline.